Hello, and welcome to the Wedding and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Jones of Royal Occasions, Inc. Today, we'll be talking all things credit with Brittany Greene of Crowned Financials. Hi, Brittany. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. We're just going to let you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company.
Okay. So again, my name is Brittany Greene, and I am the CEO and founder of Crown Financials. And my mission started in 2017. I needed to fix my own credit. I needed to get my own life together financially. And I felt as if I didn't get a chance to learn it in school, and it wasn't something that was talked about at home. So I said, you know what, I have to pretty much teach myself, and I'm big on research, so I'm always looking to research and further my knowledge. So I started, but then I realized it was a huge issue across America. I wasn't the only one that wasn't learning it in school. I wasn't the only one that wasn't learning it at home. So I began to make it my mission to educate. And I really just developed a passion. And here we are 3 years later, and I am helping people to really fix their credit, but not fix it in a way where they have to come back, right? I want to, I'm big on education. So the goal is that after you leave my presence, now you're stepping into other areas of your finance and just continuing to grow for generational wealth and so much more.
So, what was your credit journey like?
So my credit journey was very interesting all the way back from college. I knew a little bit about credit, so I opened some credit cards but my credit journey when I first started was, okay, max it out and pay it off with your refund check.
Right.
But then I realized, okay, once I graduated, the refund check stopped coming and the balance was still there. So I really tried to, figure out other ways to properly build. So I built my credit up into the 700s right after that. And it was sitting in the 700s until 2018. I started the company as a side hustle, but I was still working in corporate America at the time. And then so when I was in college, my credit score was a 700. And then after college, when all the balances hit and it pretty much stayed there, it went down into the 500s. And then I built it right back up to the 700s up until 2018. At the end of 2018, I actually lost my job, and my credit really shot. Now, mind you, I have this company teaching people to fix their credit or, increase their credit and really build their financial profile. And here I am, kind of dealing with life at the same time. But I actually use that as a power method for me, because that helped me in a way that I'm able to now help my clients even further. Because by July of 2019, after I had lost everything, car repossession, didn't really have anywhere to stay, and really just trying to build my business now full time instead of, as a side hustle, my credit score went all the way down into the 4s. And then by July of 2019, it was back in the 5s. And then as of now, to date, we're back in the 700s. So it just helped me to be able to help my clients even more by all the things that I had to go through. And I'm able to now have a certain type of vulnerability with them to where now they see, okay, you're a human. Life is going to happen. You have, people where the issue is just them and their behaviors and lack of education. But then you have people that you deal with that, life just hits. So just being able to speak from both perspectives of having very irresponsible behaviors to now, having life hit, but still being able to rebuild in either situation, it brings hope to them as well. So that's a little bit about my credit journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think a lot of times especially when you're in college or you're new to credit, you don't realize that it's more than just getting a credit card. You don't realize that, these things could come back and haunt you later on, and the importance of credit. So can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of credit? And because it is something that you can't live without, it's hard to live without. Let me say it that way. It's hard to live without it in this country.
Yep.
So talk to us a little bit about that.
Of course. I think credit is extremely important because you end up living a more expensive lifestyle with poor credit because now you're overpaying for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And people think that, oh, it's going to take me a lot of time to fix my credit, or I have to I may not have all the money to pay all these things off. Maybe I'll just let it fall off. And people really don't realize that it's hurting them more than it's helping them. And the process is actually very, very simple. But just speaking from a standpoint of me personally in corporate America being denied a position because of my credit, let me know
Wow.
how extremely important it was. That was actually one of the reasons why I started fixing my credit in 2017. Was I had the master's degree. I did what mom told me to do. I went to college. I got the degrees. I got the experience. I did internships. I did everything to make myself marketable.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came down to getting that promotion, I was denied because of my credit. So it really pretty much set a tone in my head of how important it is, because people need jobs to live, right?
Right.
And we don't want to stay in the complacent in the same area. We want to seek increase, and we want to have a higher, you know, ability to be able to reach certain marks within our life. So to be able to have access to that
Mm-hmm.
is the really importance of credit. And there's so many things that you can do to leverage your credit. You can leverage your credit to invest. You can leverage your credit to purchase homes, to pay off debt. There's so many things that you're actually able to do with your credit.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do that when you're actually taking advantage of that power to do so. And I think that it's extremely important, as life continues to get crazier with everything that's going on. We have to be able to teach the next generation, right, how to manage
Right.
their finances, how
Right.
important credit is, and just how it affects every single thing that you do, especially when you want to get an apartment, or if you want to have utilities in your home. They're going to run
Right.
those things. Your
Right.
insurance, your interest rates, everything is determined off of that number,
Mm-hmm.
or factors dealing with that number, if it isn't the number like actually directly.
Right. I think a lot of people don't think about the fact that, you don't not only need credit for a car loan or a mortgage, you do need it for your utilities. And like you said, for some jobs require that you have a good credit score. And I
Mhm.
think people, because they may not be dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, they don't take that into consideration. And sometimes, we just make silly mistakes. Sometimes life happens, but
Mhm.
it's good to know that you can rebuild your credit, because that
Yeah.
is so important. Um, with newlyweds or couples that are planning to get married, um, and looking at building a life together,
Mhm.
sometimes I've heard people say, well, what you did before we got together, that's on you, but that follows you into a relationship. It follows you into a marriage. And so, um, would you speak to what couples can do as they're planning to
Mhm.
get married, planning for a life together, what they can do to have these discussions and see where they are, and what
Yeah.
they can do to build upon that so that they're able to have the things that they want, whether it's a home or a car or whatever.
So as a couple, it becomes extremely important. I even talk to this about, in my friendships, of like, hey, let's, make this conversation normal for us to talk about. So in a relationship, it is especially important, because one of the major things that you're going to be doing is merging finances,
Mm-hmm.
especially if that's something that, you're going to have one household, you want to run everything on one accord, you're going to be merging those finances. So it's going to be extremely important to put the embarrassment or the shame to the side, and really, come to terms that, hey, I may have made some mistakes in my past, but I don't want to take that with me going forward. And you never know, the other person may be able to hold you accountable for some of the things where you may fall short, and vice versa. So I think it's important to, when having those conversations, highlight each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses, because by bringing both of those to the forefront, you're being completely vulnerable. You're putting
Mm-hmm.
it all out there on the table. You're putting the mistakes out there all on the table, so that when the strategies come to play, you're able to lean on each other's strengths and then work around each other's weaknesses, especially when it comes to building credit, managing finances. Because to me, besides life happening, finance is all about behavior. I studied
Wow.
psychology in college, and I actually studied behavioral finance as well. And one of the major things was, we are a product of our nature, of what we saw growing up. So a lot of those
Right.
habits we have
Right.
to now break. And now when you're merging it with someone else, you're going to clash, heads if you guys don't find a way to compromise and agree. So being able to not only put those things out there on the table, but, understand that we have differences, and we now have to learn how to work with those differences, and now, hold each other accountable for certain behaviors that we do good and certain behaviors that we do bad. And being able to find a common ground is going to be crucial. And that doesn't just come with credit, because I think that credit is the foundation, because it's a reflection of what's been going on in your life, whether it be from behaviors or just life happening and how you deal with it. But if you choose to ignore your credit score, guess what? It's going to be stagnant. It's going to fall apart. And then you're going to be doing a lot of guessing in your relationship of, oh, well, I'll just run my finances like this. And then they have a different view. So it is extremely crucial to, again, lay it out on the table, find out the strengths and weaknesses of both parties, put out what it is, and come to a common ground on how you guys are going to deal with things, and understand that it's a journey. Be
Right.
patient with one another. Avoid the you, and come together as, okay, this is an us.
Right.
This is a we thing. We have to come together on this and acknowledge that we both fall short in areas.
So would you advise them to begin working on their credit prior to marriage? Yes.
I would definitely, because, and especially because when it comes to weddings, some people do actually lean on their credit to make things happen. So if they are going to be leaning on credit to make things happen, have a strategy once the wedding is done.
Right.
And now you guys are starting your life together. Have a strategy for once the house is purchased, because after that, your credit is going to take a hit, right? So being able to create those strategies and start prior till, this is going to let you know, hey, is this someone that I can work with financially throughout the relationship?
Right.
And if we're, especially if we're taking it to this extreme level of, okay, this is marriage, this is a lifetime commitment that we're signing up for.
Exactly.
Are we ready for this?
Right. Right. Yeah. You definitely need to be able to work together as one when it comes to finances. So let's go back to basics, like your credit score. What is the lowest score you can have? What is the highest score you can have? What are the advantages, disadvantages of those scores?
So now this is going to be funny, because I like I like this question simply because the scores can vary. So technically through FICO, which is the most important model, that's about where 90% of lenders will look at your scores in order to determine if you are credit worthy or not. The scale is about 300 to 850. Okay. You have another model out there called the Vantage model, which is pretty popular now, but most lenders do not use it. Only about 10% of them do. But for the consumer, we log on to Credit Karma, we're looking at our score and we're thinking that's the final thing, right? So on that one, the scores tend to vary just a little bit. I've seen some interesting things. The lowest on there that I have seen that's, that falls within that range of the 300 to 850 was, a 300. But sometimes on that Vantage model or that Credit Karma model that you'll see, I've seen a negative credit score on there, and I've seen something that says not applicable. But once you log into myfico.com or Experian.com, you'll see that your score is a little bit different from what you may see on Credit Karma. So just to kind of understand the whole grand scheme of things, 300 to 850. Now, the advantages of having a great credit score is leverage, power, and it's beyond the number. Right. I think the major advantage is understanding the balance of the file. And once you have the balance of the file, you have a strategy that becomes second nature. And when it becomes second nature, that's when everything is, smooth sailing, so that even when life happens, you're able to say, you know what, I got to maybe take a pause, maybe take a break, but I know exactly how to get back where I was. Right. Versus, with the 300 credit score or anything below I would say anything below 600, it's a little bit more difficult to get approved for things. You're going to need guaranteed approval accounts, and you're going to have to, be able to invest. You may not get approved or you may get approved, but you may have high interest rates.
Right.
So I would say there's no advantages of having a low credit score, except for the fact that you can now start over with education get a good strategy and then build up and maintain it. When it comes to having a great credit score, that's where the power lies. And not just with being able to get approved for things, but just having an easier way of life, of knowing, okay, my life isn't as hectic. I'm not feeling as if I'm up to here in financial turmoil. I'm able to actually have a breath of relief and just be able to go on about life the way I desire and deserve.
I don't know anybody that has an 850 credit score.
Okay.
So, do you find that most people, once they start to rebuild their credit, end up somewhere maybe in the 700 range, or do
Um,
they get all the way up to 850? I
I
mean,
have seen people in the 800s. I have seen people in the 800s, but it's not something that happens overnight. And I think that's one
right.
of the big misconceptions is I know people who work with credit
Hmm.
and they make some type of magic happen to where it happens overnight, but it doesn't stick. Right. So
Okay.
I work with more so of the thing that longevity, good behaviors, and, actual strategy is going to get you there and keep you there. Of
Hmm.
course, your credit score is going to fluctuate, especially as you use it and as you
Right.
do things with it. If you have to end up using more of your credit, it's going to fluctuate a little more down than up. But if you're, using it with a specific strategy, you're going to see it continue to increase. But it's one of those things where it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take some time for you to get there. It's easy to get into the sevens. I will say that it's pretty easy to get into the sevens. It's just when you're getting to the 800s, it's going to take a little bit more consistency,
Hmm.
because that's a major portion of the actual credit score breakdown is consistency. And I think that's what a lot of people miss.
How long does it normally take when you start to rebuild your credit? Like, how long is that process to get from a low score to maybe a 650, 700?
So everyone's file is different and everyone's situation is different. I work personally with personalization because I know that everyone has something different that they're bringing to the table, right?
Yeah.
Then the other portion is they may not be able to be as aggressive, where you have other people who are like, yep, I'm going to sign up for all the trade lines. I'm going to get all the, cards at one time. I'm going to apply the strategy immediately. So I
Right.
like to tell people, give yourself about 6 months to a year, but be patient with yourself
Hmm.
if you have to take a pause. Right? You don't want to try to force it and get yourself back into a hole. If you got to take a pause on some things, that's okay. But just understand that you're giving yourself that time. So like I said, from a year ago, I got back into the sevens,
Wow.
but I was extremely aggressive because
Hmm.
I knew I cannot be out here talking to people about fixing their credit and I'm sitting in a terrible place, even though it wasn't my fault, right? Life
Right.
happened to
Right.
happen to
Right.
me.
Right.
So it depends on how aggressive they are able to be. But I always like to say 6 months to a year of really going in, that's going to
Hmm.
give you really good consistency.
Great. So you just rebuilt your credit, or last year you rebuilt your credit. And now here we are, we're faced with this pandemic, this COVID
Yes.
19 pandemic. A lot of people have lost their jobs, or are furloughed. So their income is, has either decreased or there's none coming in right now. What can people do in this time to make sure they're protecting their finances and their credit?
Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest things that I've been talking to a lot of my clients, or just even on social media, really talking about is balance protection. That's one of the biggest things that someone can do at this time. Contact your credit card companies, see if they have balance protection. Unfortunately, I did not know about balance protection until the pandemic, or else I would have been screaming that to the top of the hills, beforehand. But for those who are fortunate enough to still have their job and still have income coming in, contact your creditors and see if they have what's called balance protection. This helps you in the instance that you fall ill. This
Hmm.
helps you in the instance if you lose your job, where your balance is protected, right? I'm also telling people to, even just talk to your creditors. Right now, there are so many creditors that are deferring payments, reducing payments, and really working, for the people at this time, which is
Hmm.
probably one of the first times that I've ever seen them do things like this, over my 3 years of, being so willing to work with people during this time. So don't neglect your bills. Don't neglect your credit card companies, right? I understand that you may be thinking, okay, hey, I don't have it right now. This is going on. But reach out to them. A lot of them, like I said, are deferring payments, or they're reducing payments and holding off on late payments. See if
Hmm.
those are things that are a part of their program to help you. And then when you do have income coming in, catch up. pay
Right.
down on that revolving credit, because guess what? That is now more income that you have, that you can use in the instance of an emergency. But if you're, trying to balance everything, I see a lot of people are, and during this pandemic, a lot of people are really organizing their finances and getting their credit together. So it's more so, okay, if you can, utilize that deferment time and catch up, do so. Or if you can, pay things down and you just had it in your savings, do so, because that's disposable money that you have later on.
I've heard some people say, well, I have the money to pay it, but I'm just going to hold on to it just in case something happens later on because of, what's going on with the pandemic. But they're like, nah, maybe I'll just hold on and see just in case I lose my job or whatever. Do you recommend that? Something like
I
that?
don't. I
Yeah.
don't. I prefer to have your credit card balances at zero, because that's still money. That's still money that you have access to if anything does go wrong. But
Right.
if it's sitting at zero and your credit score is, is gets that quick initial boost from you bringing down that, you never know. The credit card companies may give you access to more funds, or your credit
Right.
score may be in a good place where you can now have access to more funds by applying for new types of credit, right?
Right.
But it all goes with strategy. If you have that money to, take care of some of your credit card balances. Now, this isn't just pertaining to, other collection debt and
Right.
charge off, something different. But
Right.
when it comes down to paying your credit cards, you want to rid that balance as quickly as you possibly can, because you want it every time it reports to the credit bureaus, you want it to show zero, or anywhere between 0 to 10%, 0 to 20%, or 0 to 30%. Why? Because that helps you when you're looking to obtain more credit. And if
Ah.
anything happens and now your savings is depleted, your credit is all the way jacked up, how are you going to have access to more funds?
And, I've never heard anybody talk about keeping your credit balances to a certain percentage because I know a lot of people that carry like large balances on their cards. And personally have had to deal with credit issues. So I try to keep my credit cards balances low, but I've never heard anybody really talk about keeping it to a 10, 20, or 30% um,
Mhm.
balance. And the reason behind that is so that you have more leverage for more credit if you need it.
Yes, you have that. And then especially people are looking, and this is crazy because with this pandemic, so many people are wanting to leverage their credit to invest, but they
Oh.
have to get their things in order. And one of the biggest things is that when lenders are looking to give you more credit, they're looking at your behaviors over a 0 to 12 years, I'm sorry, 0 to 1 year span, or even 2 year span. They want to see what have you been doing on a month-to-month basis, right? But if you've been carrying a high balance on a month-to-month basis, they're
Hmm.
not going to feel comfortable giving you more, because they're going to think in their mind, well, you didn't manage what we gave you already correctly. So why would
Right.
I give you more? Right?
Right.
So it's big on manipulating how the system sees you. Even if you have to use your credit, that's okay. But you make sure that by the reporting date of when it reports to the bureaus,
Hmm.
it's at 0 to 20, or 0 to 30, or 0 to 10%, because then that helps in your favor. There's a chart in Experian.com that I look at in the credit summary section, and it shows the behaviors of how someone uses their credit.
No.
So if I don't go on there and I see that they're constantly in the high, I'm going to
Hmm.
let them know, hey, if I was a lender, I would not loan you more credit, because I
Yeah.
see that you already don't know how to leverage what was given to you. Or I'm going to give you a high interest rate because you don't have a history of paying back everything, right? You have a
Right.
history of carrying balances. How do
Hmm.
I know that I can trust you with more credit? But when I see the low, I'm like, okay, I can trust you. Let's give you a decent interest rate, and I have no problem with giving you more access to credit later on.
When you talk about rebuilding your credit,
Mm-hmm.
I know there are people who go to companies that, like you said, will do something that'll give you that boost
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of days, I guess. And then you have those people like yourself that work with people to build over time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend?
I'm always going to recommend the area that's giving you education, because you want something that's going to stick, and you don't want to have to keep going back to companies to give you a quick fix. Now,
Mhm.
when I say I work with things over time, doesn't mean that you don't see the initial big boost, or, because if anyone looks at my social media, you're going to see me. I'm always posting things where people are having 100-point increase, more than 100-point increase within a short period of time. But you're also learning behaviors that
Right.
are going to carry that out and help you maintain it. Because see, one of the biggest things, or the biggest issues when people go to the quick fixes, they're going there for that quick fix. And I understand if you have to go there because it's an emergency and you need to get something, but you're educated and you know
Right.
what to do.
Right.
Versus if you're going there just to get the quick fix and then you're going to be back there in 3 months because you don't even know what to do, right?
Right.
And they're not necessarily giving you the education or the tools to do so. So I'm going to always recommend going the route of strategy and longevity. Because, and even if it's not just with me, even if it's, I like to say YouTube University or Google College, wherever that you're going to learn your information, or other companies that are coaching and actually showing you strategies that are
Yes.
going to help you long term, that's where you're going to want to go for
Because
sure. And down.
because then it becomes part of who you are, right? It
Yes.
it becomes part of your habit, one of, a habit, and
Mhm.
something that you carry through on in your day-to-day life, and it's
Yes.
not just, like you said, a short-term fix.
Because
Um,
when you know better, you do better. I like
yes,
to think.
most people do, I think. So, again, back to the times that we're living in, a lot of times people don't think about, we live in the moment. We live in a society where it's, I want it now, and the sooner I can get it, the better. Nobody, I won't say in nobody, so that's incorrect, but people sometimes don't think about the future
Yeah.
or what can happen if, right? And I think this whole situation right now is making a lot of us think a lot differently.
Mhm.
So, what is your advice regarding crisis planning?
So crisis planning is not supposed to happen when the crisis actually takes off.
Right.
Crisis planning should happen when everything is going right. When everything is going right in your household, that is not the time to splurge and, I mean, yes, treat yourself because you always
Right.
want to treat yourself. And I'm one who I'm going to treat myself. I love food, so I'm always eating. But I know that I am only going to do that once I have everything in a great alignment. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not saying that everything is going to be perfect, everything is going to fall, the way you want it, because this is still life and you still must learn lessons. But the time to prepare is when everything is going right in your household. If you can put an extra $5 away, building up $5 at a time is greater than trying to put away 100 at a time, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes we may fall short. So when everything is going right, all in all, when everything is going right, that is the time when you want to begin crisis planning. You want to even just start reaching out to your creditors and saying, hey, what do you have in, what do you have in place to help me if a crisis ever happens, right? But like I said, balance protection. I found out about balance protection once the crisis actually happens. What do you have in place for me? Do you have any deferments? Do you have any, payment reduction programs? How are you going to help me? Because at the end of the day, you are an asset to that company. They need your business. So
Mhm.
what are they doing to make sure that you're okay?
Mhm.
And then actually sticking to the plan, I would say, would be the third thing, is
Mhm.
actually stick to the crisis plan that you have in place,
Mhm.
unless, there's some huge emergency where, things are thrown off. But I like to think that everything is personalized. Everyone's situation is different. But one thing that's true across the board is do it when everything is good.
You mentioned the balance protection. This is the second time in the conversation you've mentioned that. So explain a little bit more what that is. Is that some type of insurance, or
Yeah.
exactly what is that? And do you
So
pay
with
for
credit
that, or
card
does?
insurance, you do, but every credit card company is different.
Okay.
So they would go off of maybe about, let's say, 10% or 1% of your balance, of what your current balance is right now, and that's going to be the amount of the fee that you put in every single month. But it is
Right.
an insurance that you have, so that if you do fall ill or if you do lose your job, that balance protection steps in to now pay on your balance so that you're working against late payments. You don't have late payments to now fight off of your file, and it keeps your credit card balance in a certain good standing where you're consistently now paying on it, and they're just kind of chipping in from that balance, that
Ah.
protection of that fee that you paid every single month. So I would say if I have about, I guess, $50
Mhm.
on my card,
Mhm.
I'm going to pay an extra $5, every single month that stows away into my balance protection account. And it's just, I want to say anywhere between like 1 to 10% based on the balance that you do carry.
In working with my couples
Mhm.
in planning for their wedding, a lot of time it comes up that they have things on their credit that may prevent them in the future
Mm-hmm.
with purchasing a home or getting a new vehicle or even getting credit for their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that tends to be on their credit a lot are student loans.
Mm-hmm.
How do people deal with that? How do you keep that from becoming a hindrance?
So with student loans, it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky because that's a federal loan. So anything that has
Yeah.
to do with federal taxes, those things we know have to be paid. But
Right.
one of the biggest things is communication when it comes to them. Because a lot of people will just say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay my student loan." So, and then they get the late payments that go to their later missed payments that go to their report. And those are the most difficult to actually get removed. Not saying that
Right.
it's impossible, but it is one of the most difficult to actually get removed.
Hmm.
So one of the biggest things is communication. I tell people, I say, if you're ever going to be late on an account, reach out to them. They have things set in place to help you. Not every company, but most companies do. So reach out and say, hey, I'm having some trouble paying this at this time. Can I get on a quick deferment?
Right.
Student loans will definitely put you in a deferment, right? Or
Hmm.
they'll see that you qualify for zero payment at that time. Then if so, that gives you some chance to, save some extra money. Then you can fix your credit. Then you can then leverage your credit through Denzel to do velocity banking to get rid of a lot of the debt in a quicker time frame. But it all comes from it actually all starts from communication. And most people will not communicate with their student loan providers. They'll just kind of let it go off, and then it's end up late on their file. And they're like, "Oh, can I get this removed?" And
Right.
it's one of those things where it's federal. If it gets removed, it's probably going to come back, and it's going to come back worse, right? You don't want them garnishing your wages. You
Right.
don't want those things happening. Late payments, missed payments, derogatory marks on your file. All you have to do is communicate with them and let them know what the situation was.
And with the deferment that you've mentioned throughout the conversation, is
Mm-hmm.
that something where it's just put to the end of the loan, or do they charge you interest? You know,
Um, it depends. It depends.
okay,
When it comes to credit cards, it depends on the company, the credit
okay.
card company.
Hmm.
When it comes to loans and like especially student loans, you're probably gonna still receive interest on for that time frame that you were not paying them. But like I said, once you've leveraged your or you increase your credit enough to leverage it, I partner with Denzel Rodriguez, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with him. And he works with helping people to eliminate large amounts of debt in a shorter amount of time by leveraging that powerful tool called credit. But
Right.
the only way that you're able to, do that is, again, communication. And by, communicating and getting that deferment, yeah, it may be a little setback, in the beginning because
Right.
of course
Right.
there's some interest, but look at the long term, of it, you're going to be able to pay it off and you're going to be able to save so much interest,
Right.
right? If
Right.
done in a certain way. So
Right.
that's always the process that I recommend is communicate with them, get on deferment if you have to, stack your chips, fix your credit, then move on to velocity banking. And it's a powerful, literally a powerful cycle to help you eliminate thousands of dollars of interest and cut down a lot of time because most people think I'm going to be paying student loans until I'm dead. I'm not paying student loans until I'm dead. I'll be done with student loans by the time I'm 40. And that's giving it, that's being nice.
Right.
So
Right.
I
Right.
think people should have that outlook, especially because there's so many tools out there.
Yeah.
So that would be the cycle that I would recommend them to do.
Yeah. I too feel that education is important because if I knew about credit the way I know about it today when I
Mm-hmm,
first started,
mm-hmm,
um, I think my life would have been a whole lot easier, but they don't really teach that in the schools.
yep,
And I think that's where it's missing. These kids get out of high school, they go straight to college, and you've got every bank trying to give you a card. I'm like, how do you do that? These kids don't even have a job, and you're
they
giving them
don't.
credit
We
cards.
and they got me with pizza. They gave us a box of pizza and said if you sign up, you're right. I'm signing. I told you I like to eat, so I'm signing on the side of the line and I'm getting my pizza and my cars. So,
Yeah. And these banks know what they're doing because they know that the kids are, you're not enlightened for lack of a better word. You
yep.
really don't know what that means. You don't know what you're doing when you get yourself in debt.
Mm-hmm,
It's good for a while. It's good to be able to pull out a card and pay for this and pay for that,
mm-hmm.
but then you live to regret it.
Yeah.
Most people do.
Hmm.
Um,
And that's one of the things I'll say that I'm working on is because I really especially want to target college students because I was a college student and I knew exactly what it was then.
mhm.
Well, I know now what it was.
Yeah,
And if I can help change the direction in at least one life, I know that's going to trickle into other lives. So that's something that I'm working on at this moment.
that's awesome. Speaking of that, I was going to just ask you to tell us a little bit of what's next for you, what's next for the company, what you've got going on.
Yes. So recently, I just released my second book, A to Z Credit, and then I introduced a course that goes with it, A to Z Credit Masterclass. So with that, it's my goal to I put together a success strategy for people to really just kind of go in, plug in, have the education, understand FICO versus Vantage, understand how to read your report, how to interpret results, how to send off letters, how to build your credit, all the different tools that are out there for you. I put it all into a master class.
Okay.
And then I also, of course, teach seminars and webinars and workshops online. I'll be doing, some workshops very soon. I'll be doing a big one online. But my biggest next project is for college students, just like I mentioned. I have a project called Project Pre-Rich, and I am going to be getting into the schools, teaching students about financial literacy, credit, and what to expect once you get out of college or once you get out of school in general.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, tell us where we can find you, with your social media handles, where our guests can find you.
Yes. So you can find me almost anywhere as Brittany Greene. On Instagram, it's I am Brittany Greene. So it's IamBrittanyGreene. And don't forget the E. Please don't forget the E. But on Facebook, it's Brittany Greene. On LinkedIn, it's Brittany Greene. And then, of course, you can find me on my website, www.crownedfinancialsllc.com.
Awesome. Brittany, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm sure we're going to probably have to bring you back. Once people listen to this episode, they may have specific questions. So we look forward to having you back. And thanks again for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great one. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Wedding and Beyond podcast. For more advice on planning your wedding and preparing for a successful marriage, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening. Follow us on Instagram at the Wedding and Beyond podcast and visit our website at royaloccasionsinc.com. Until next time.